Have you ever looked at a person and wondered how much pain a human heart can hold before it completely breaks? If you saw David walking down the street, you would feel an instant wave of pity for him. David was only 42 years old, but he looked like he had lived 100 lifetimes of hardship. His shoulders were bent, and dark, heavy shadows surrounded his eyes from a constant lack of sleep. His hands were rough, calloused, and constantly trembling from pure exhaustion. 3 years ago, David's life was shattered when his wife died in an accident. He became a single father to his 8-year-old daughter, Chloe. He had no time to cry or process his grief. He had to immediately figure out how to keep his little girl alive. To pay rent on their tiny apartment, David worked 2 brutal jobs. During the day, he drove a heavy delivery truck through city streets. As soon as that shift ended, he rushed to his second job, where he spent the entire night scrubbing floors in a corporate office building. David survived entirely on cheap black coffee and willpower. When co-workers asked why he never joined them for lunch, he would force a smile and say, "I had a huge breakfast at home." But it was a lie. He could not afford a sandwich for himself, because every dollar went toward buying fresh food for Chloe. Every day, David made the ultimate sacrifice. He starved himself so his daughter could eat. He wore shoes with soles so thin he could feel the freezing pavement, just so Chloe could have a warm winter coat. He believed Chloe had no idea how close they were to losing everything. But children are not blind. They feel the heavy sadness in the air. It was a freezing, rainy Thursday night, when David had a brief 1-hour break between his jobs. His back was aching so severely that he decided to drive back to their apartment, just to check on Chloe. Before leaving that morning, David used the last of their groceries to cook a warm bowl of chicken soup and rice. He left a sticky note on the refrigerator. "Chloe, please heat this up for your dinner. Daddy loves you so much." David unlocked the front door slowly. The apartment was completely dark and freezing cold because the heater was broken. The silence in the house was heavy. He walked into the kitchen, expecting to see a dirty bowl in the sink. Instead, the sink was empty. He turned around, and his heart stopped beating. There, sitting at the small wooden kitchen table, was Chloe. She was still wearing her school clothes, fast asleep, with her head resting on her folded arms. But what made David freeze in absolute horror was what sat right next to her hands. It was a perfectly clean, bright white ceramic plate. There was no food on it, and the fork and spoon beside it were completely unused. A wave of intense panic and guilt washed over David. His knees buckled as he thought, "Is my little girl starving because of me?" The sight of his child sleeping next to a completely empty plate broke something deep inside his soul. Tears streamed down David's face. He walked over to the table and knelt down beside Chloe's chair. "Chloe," David whispered, his voice trembling. He gently placed his hand on her soft shoulder. "Chloe, sweetheart, wake up. It's Daddy." Chloe stirred, rubbing her eyes with her little fists. She blinked against the dim light and looked at her father's tear-stained face. "Daddy," she mumbled, "what are you doing home?" "Chloe, please tell me the truth," David said, a sob escaping his throat. He pointed a shaking finger at the empty plate. "Why is your plate empty? Did you not find the food I made?" "Oh, sweetie, I am so sorry. Daddy failed you. You haven't eaten all night, have you?" David closed his eyes, expecting Chloe to cry about how hungry she was. But Chloe did not cry. She reached out her small hand and gently wiped a tear away from David's cheek. "I'm not starving, Daddy," Chloe said softly. "Then why is the plate empty, Chloe? If you ate the soup and rice, where is the bowl? Why did you put a clean, empty plate on the table and fall asleep next to it?" Chloe didn't say a word. Instead, she slid off her chair and walked quietly over to the corner where David's work backpack was resting. She unzipped it, reached her small arms inside, and pulled something out. Chloe walked back to the table, holding a plastic container tightly against her chest. She placed it gently in the middle of the empty white plate. Inside was the exact chicken soup and rice David had cooked for her that morning. Attached to the plastic lid was a pink sticky note that said, "For Daddy, please eat everything." David stared at the container, completely stunned. He looked up at his little girl, his voice gone. "Chloe, what is this? Why did you pack your dinner away?" Chloe looked down at her shoes, twisting the edge of her shirt. When she looked back up, her eyes were filled with tears. "I heard your stomach growling last night, Daddy," Chloe whispered. "You thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. I saw you sitting in the kitchen in the dark, drinking hot water, because we didn't have any food left for you. You always make sure I have breakfast and dinner, but you never eat anything yourself. I know we don't have a lot of money," Chloe continued, a tear running down her cheek. "And I know how hard you work. I didn't want to eat the soup, because I knew you would have to go to your night job with an empty stomach. I knew you would pass out if you didn't eat. So, the empty plate," David choked out. "The empty plate was a trick," Chloe confessed softly. "I knew that if you came home and saw an empty plate, you would think I ate my dinner. I set the table so you wouldn't worry, but I hid the food in your backpack so you would find it at work. I just wanted you to be okay, Daddy." Hearing those words completely broke David. He collapsed onto his knees on the kitchen floor and wept openly. He had spent 3 years working 20 hours a day and starving his body to protect Chloe from reality. But she wasn't living a normal childhood. She had been carrying the terrifying weight of his hunger and pain on her tiny shoulders. This innocent girl had sat in a freezing apartment, starving herself, just so her daddy could eat. Chloe dropped to her knees next to him and threw her arms around his neck. "Don't cry, Daddy," Chloe whispered. "I'm sorry I lied about the plate. I just love you so much." David pulled her into his lap, holding her close. "You don't ever have to be sorry, Chloe," David sobbed. "You are the most beautiful thing in my life. It is my job to protect you, not your job to protect me. I promise you, Daddy will always be okay. But you must promise me you will never skip a meal for me again." Chloe nodded against his chest, holding him tight. After a long time, the crying stopped. David looked at his watch and realized his second shift started in 15 minutes. If he didn't leave right now, he might lose the cleaning job. But for the first time in 3 years, David did not care about the clock or the money. His daughter needed him, and he needed her. David stood up, lifting Chloe in his arms, and carried her back to the table. He heated the chicken soup and rice in the microwave until it was steaming hot, placing it back on the center of that white plate. He grabbed 2 spoons. "We are going to share it," David said, a real smile breaking across his face. "Half for my princess and half for me." They sat together in that chilly kitchen, eating from the exact same plate, laughing and talking. David missed his night shift that evening, losing a day's pay. But as he watched Chloe's face light up with happiness, he knew he hadn't lost anything at all. David had spent years thinking true wealth was about money. But tonight, looking at the empty plate that was now full of love, he realized the truth. He was the richest man in the world because he had a daughter who loved him more than life itself. True wealth is not about what you have in your bank account. It is about the people who are willing to share an empty plate with you just to see you smile. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone you love, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories.